My name is Sarah Paleg, and I'm a third-year chemical engineering student at the Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. I've spent the summer in the lab of Professor Rachel Goldman in the Materials Science and Engineering Department here at the University of Michigan. We've been studying the gallium arsenide bismuth alloy semiconductor system, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my research. Gallium arsenide bismuth is a 3,5 semiconductor. A 3,5 semiconductor is any semiconductor that is comprised of elements from the group 3 and group 5 of the periodic table. 3,5 semiconductors have applications in niche electronic devices and essentially all optoelectronics. The solar cell that holds the current record for efficiency at 43.5% is a multi-junction cell that makes use of gallium indium arsenide nitride, which is itself a dilute nitride and a 3,5 semiconductor, as a 1 electron volt absorber. Another promising alloy system to be a 1 electron volt absorber within a multi-junction cell is gallium arsenide bismuth, which is why we're interested in the system. But gallium arsenide bismuth films have been observed to exhibit surface droplet formation during epitaxial growth. The preliminary work in our group shows that gallium droplets on the surface of a gallium arsenide substrate film actually enhance the photoluminescence emission intensity. So this past summer, we've studied the relationship between growth conditions of the film, including substrate temperature, growth rate, and the elemental flux ratios, and the effect that they have on the surface features of the grown film, with the goal of understanding how to grow high-quality gallium arsenide bismuth films with controlled surface features. For our methods, we've used a technique called molecular beam epitaxy, or MBE. It's a technique that makes use of ultra-high purity metals. These metals, through a combination of high temperature and low pressure, are sublimated, so they're converted from the solid state to the gaseous state, and then they're released at a highly controlled pressure into the growth chamber of the MBE, which is kept at an ultra-high vacuum state. Within the growth chamber, the operator has very precise control over the operating temperature, or the substrate temperature, the growth rate of the film, and the ratio of the pressures of the elemental metals. This ratio is called the beam equivalent pressure ratio, or the BEP ratio. For our samples, they are grown on 100 gallium arsenide substrate, or SI gallium arsenide substrate. On top of this, we grow a buffer layer of gallium arsenide that is 520 nanometers thick. And on top of this, we grow our film of interest, or our gallium arsenide bismuth. During growth, we use reflection high-energy electron diffraction, READ, to monitor the progression of the growth. The READ system provides information about the surface geometry and morphology of the film. This slide gives an overview of the samples that we've grown this summer. You'll see that over the course of the summer, we've grown samples at varying arsenic to gallium BEP ratios and varying bismuth to arsenic BEP ratios. The images shown are mostly AFM images, although the image on top is an SEM image. You'll also see that we've observed gallium arsenide bismuth film formation at only a certain range of arsenic to gallium BEP ratio, between 5 and 6. You'll also note that each of the AFM images has a different delta Z scale. This shows us that our features are of varying height scales, and gives us an idea of the order of magnitude of the height of the features. This slide gives an overview of droplet density as it relates to the varying of the arsenic to gallium BEP ratio. These are also mostly AFM images, although the image in the bottom left is an SEM image. You'll see that past an arsenic to gallium BEP ratio of about 2, as that ratio continues to increase, we see a drop in our droplet density. This slide highlights an interesting phenomena that we observe at high bismuth to arsenic BEP ratio and low arsenic to gallium BEP ratio. At these conditions, the droplets on our surface appear to be of a composite nature, composed of gallium and bismuth. At more traditional operating conditions, at higher arsenic to gallium BEP ratios and lower bismuth to arsenic BEP ratios, we have observed gallium droplets with no bismuth. The images on the bottom half of the slide are EDAX, or energy dispersive X-ray images, and each color represents a different element. So the red represents gallium, green represents arsenic, and blue represents bismuth. That's how we know that in our droplets, since we see red and blue, they're comprised of gallium and bismuth. This slide highlights the technique that we use called X-ray diffraction. X-rays are very sensitive to changes in the lattice parameter of the film, and we can use the changes in the lattice parameter to determine if bismuth has incorporated into our films. You'll see that for each sample there are two peaks. The peak on the left indicating gallium arsenide bismide and the peak on the right indicating gallium arsenide. The presence of a second peak on the left tells us that there is bismuth incorporating into our films because pure gallium arsenide only shows one peak, the one that's on the right. You'll also notice that as our samples progress from red to blue to black, these represent increasing arsenic to gallium BEP ratio. And as we make this progression from red to blue to black and increasing arsenic to gallium BEP ratio, we also see a decrease in X, or the incorporation of bismuth into our films. Overall, we've looked at the influence of changing parameters, specifically the bismuth to arsenic and arsenic to gallium BEP ratio, on the surface features that are observed. We've done this through examining droplet size, droplet density, and composition. We've arrived at three different observations. First, as the bismuth to arsenic BEP ratio decreases, the surface feature size decreases. Second, as the arsenic to gallium BEP ratio increases, the droplet density decreases. And then lastly, for high bismuth to arsenic and low arsenic to gallium BEP ratio, composite droplets of gallium bismuth nature are observed. Overall, we've observed gallium arsenide bismide film formation with X less than 0.01 and droplet density less than 3 × 10⁶ droplets per centimeter squared.